I was sitting across from a close friend last week, someone I've known for the better part of a decade. We were grabbing coffee, the same way we've always done. But about 20 minutes in, I realized something unsettling. I wasn't actually talking to the person sitting in front of me. I was talking to a screenshot I had taken of him 3 years ago. Back then, he was the guy who prioritized our weekly catch-ups above everything. He was the one who replied to texts in minutes and always had a specific high-energy way of debating. But as he sat there now, checking his watch every 5 minutes and giving me these polite, truncated answers, I could feel this intense internal friction. My mind kept reaching for the old version of him, expecting a specific warmth and attention that just wasn't there anymore. I felt a surge of what I thought was resentment, a feeling that he was somehow being unfaithful to the friendship we had. But as I watched him, I started to notice the variables I had been ignoring. I saw the way his phone lit up with work emails he was trying to ignore, the subtle fatigue in his posture, and the way he talked about his new responsibilities. He hadn't betrayed our friendship. He had simply crossed the threshold. While I was busy being loyal to a memory, his reality had silently updated. New stresses, new pressures, a different state space entirely. He hadn't changed overnight. I had just failed to notice the slow drift until the phase transition was already complete, and he had flipped from the friend I knew into a version I didn't recognize. Most of us live our lives like this, walking around with a gallery of expired screenshots, trying to interact with a world that has already moved on. We call it the tragedy of impermanence, but that's too poetic for how much it actually hurts. The real problem isn't that life changes. The problem is our update lag. That agonizing, expensive gap between the moment the world resets and the moment we finally stop reaching for a version of reality that no longer exists.
Oh, that is a heavy way to start. Update lag.
Right. It's not the usual language you hear. People say, we grew apart.
Yeah, we're just on different paths now. It's all so gentle, but that opening, that's not gentle at all. It's almost technical. It makes it sound like a system crash.
Well, it feels like a system crash, doesn't it? That's what got me. When you're in that situation, it doesn't feel poetic. It feels like a glitch.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to interact with someone, a friend, a partner, whoever, and the responses you're getting are just wrong. It feels like the software is bugged.
Right. You're pressing a button you've pressed 1,000 times, expecting a certain result, and something completely different happens. Or, nothing happens at all.
Exactly. And your first thought isn't, oh, this person has evolved. Your first thought is, this is broken. They're breaking the rules.
And that resentment it mentions, that feeling of being cheated somehow, that's really the core of what we're digging into today, isn't it?
It is. And looking through the source material you sent over, wow, it's a wild mix.
A little eclectic, you think?
A little. We've got Reddit threads that are just, pure relationship drama right next to a scientific paper on, was it Kalman filters?
Mood dynamics using Kalman filters, yeah.
And then evolutionary psychology, behavioral economics. It feels like we're pulling from completely different universes here. How do these pieces even connect?
Well, that's the mission today. We're taking all these different lenses, the human drama from Reddit, the deep history from evolutionary psych, and the cold, hard mechanics from control theory, and we're pointing them all at one single question.
Why does it hurt so damn much when people change?
And how do we stop living in the past? How do we close that update lag? Because this isn't just about romantic relationships, right?
Oh, this is your career path changing. It's your parents getting older or becoming different people. It's your own identity shifting under your feet.
It's the friction between the map you have in your head and the actual territory you're standing on. So where do we start? To really get this, we have to go way, way back.
To the source code?
Exactly. We have to talk about why our brains are wired to hate change in the first place.
It's the evolutionary mismatch. The stone-aged brains in a space-aged world idea.
Right. Your brain's core operating system was coded for a very different environment, a world with small, stable tribes where social change was slow and usually very dangerous.
Yeah, and I have a story here from the source material that just perfectly illustrates this. It's about a man named Julian. I think reading this really sets the stage for the whole betrayal alarm concept.
Let's hear it.
I heard about a man in London named Julian who spent 3 years feeling like a victim of a profound moral crime. He had met Clara when they were both struggling artists, sharing cheap coffee and big dreams. But as Clara's career took off and she transitioned into the high-stakes world of commercial design, her priorities shifted. She became pragmatic, time-poor, and socialized with a different circle. Julian felt betrayed, not because she lied, but because she was no longer the version of the woman he had committed to. From an evolutionary psychology perspective, Julian's brain was reacting to a social phase transition, as if it were a physical threat. In the ancestral environment, a change in a partner's status or behavior could mean a loss of resources or protection, triggering a betrayal alarm. I saw a comment on a forum recently where someone said, "She didn't change, she just stopped being the person I needed her to be." Looking at Julian's story through my lens as a commentator, I realize we often suffer from a massive update lag. We treat our partners like static objects in a museum, but the modern sexual marketplace is a fluid stream. When we cry betrayal, we are often just mourning a version of someone that the universe has already deleted. It's a hard pill to swallow, realizing that your pain isn't caused by their malice, but by your own refusal to hit the refresh button on your mental map of them.
A profound moral crime. That's the key phrase, isn't it? He didn't just feel sad or disappointed, he felt like a victim.
Yes. And that's the part that's so confusing from a modern logical perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, objectively, his partner succeeded. She worked hard, her career took off.
That's a good thing, right?
In a vacuum, yes. But his brain isn't operating in a vacuum. It's operating on Pleistocene-era survival software.
So what's that software telling him? What's the betrayal alarm actually screaming in his ear?
It's screaming, "Warning, alliance stability compromised."
Nah.
In a small tribal environment, your life literally depended on the predictability and loyalty of your key allies, especially your mate.
Okay.
If your partner's status suddenly shoots up, or their behavior changes, or they start spending time with a new, higher status group, that's a 5-alarm fire.
Why? What's the immediate threat?
The threat is abandonment. The threat is that they will trade up, they'll take their newfound resources, their status, their connections, and leave you for a mate who is now more on their level. In the ancestral world, being abandoned was a potential death sentence. So Julian's brain isn't processing, Claire's busy with her design job, it's processing imminent resource loss, social exclusion, possible death.
It's an existential threat, and this ties directly into something called error management theory.
Right, this is the whole tiger in the grass idea.
Exactly. Imagine you're walking through the savannah, you hear a rustle in the tall grass. You have two potential errors you can make.
Okay.
Error 1. You assume it's a tiger, but it's just the wind, the cost. You jump, your heart races, you waste a few calories running away. Minimal cost.
You feel a little silly for a second.
Right. Error 2, you assume it's the wind, but it's a tiger.
The cost.
Of your lunch. The cost is everything.
You're out of the gene pool. So natural selection built a brain that is biased to make the first error, not the second. It's better to be paranoid and wrong than to be chill and dead.
So we're wired to see tigers everywhere. We are wired to overperceive threats. Now apply that to Julian. Clara is distant. She cancels a date. That's the rustle in the grass. His brain can assume it's the wind. She's just busy. Or it can assume it's a tiger. She's pulling away. She's going to leave me.
And his brain, our brains, will default to tiger every single time.
It's safer. The emotional cost of a false positive, of feeling betrayed when she's just busy, is much lower from an evolutionary perspective than the cost of a false negative thinking everything is fine right up until she leaves you.
So that feeling of being the victim of a moral crime is actually a defense mechanism. It's the alarm bell designed to make you act, to fight, to do something to prevent the abandonment.
The pain is a feature, not a bug. It's designed to grab your attention and force you to address a potential survival threat.
But I mean, let's be honest here. Sometimes the rustle is a tiger. People do change. They do trade up. The alarm isn't always false.
No, it's not. And that's where this gets really uncomfortable, because it forces us to wade into the murky waters of what some of our Reddit sources call sexual market value.
Yeah. I knew we were heading here. That term. It just feels so transactional, like you're putting a price tag on a human being.
It's a very cold and frankly often misused and weaponized term. You see it a lot in corners of the internet where people are trying to apply a kind of brutal pseudo-economic logic to human relationships.
It seems like it's mostly used out of bitterness.
Often, yes. But for the sake of this deep dive, let's try to set aside the cultural baggage of the term for a second and just look at the underlying principle it's trying to describe.
Which is what? That our value as a partner isn't fixed.
Yes. That things like age, health, status, income, social skills, these are all variables. And when those variables change significantly for one person in a partnership and not the other, it can create instability.
This is the whole concept of the wall that kept coming up in the sources. The idea that for women especially, their value supposedly plummets after a certain age.
Right, and you saw the counter arguments to that in the threads, which are just as important. Many people were pushing back hard, saying that's a complete fantasy cope for insecure men.
That it's a way to feel better about being rejected.
Yeah.
You know, she doesn't want me now, but just wait, her value will drop.
Yeah.
It's a revenge narrative.
And that's a totally valid critique of how the term is often used. It can be a tool for fear-mongering or a balm for a bruised ego. The reality is that value is incredibly subjective and contextual. But let's bring it back to Julian and Clara.
Look.
When they met, they were in a state of equilibrium, two struggling artists. Their market value, if you want to use that term, was matched.
They're in the same league.
Exactly. But then Claire's career took off. Her status variable went way up. Her income variable went way up. Julian stayed the same. Suddenly, the system is out of balance.
And that imbalance is what triggers his betrayal alarm on a deeper level. It's not just that she's busy, it's that she could now, theoretically, do better than him.
It creates a massive sense of insecurity. He's clinging to the screenshot from when their valuations were equal. In that old picture, he was a peer. In the current reality, he feels like he's been left behind.
It's like his emotional skill set was perfect for the partner of a struggling artist. He knew how to be supportive, how to share big dreams over cheap coffee.
Right.
But he may not have the skill set to be the partner of a high-powered commercial designer. He doesn't know how to navigate that world. His inputs, to borrow a term we'll get to later, are now mismatched to the system.
And instead of trying to learn the new system, he's just angry that the old one is gone. He's mourning the screenshot because in that screenshot, he was competent. He was safe.
And that feeling of losing safety, it's not just a thought, it's a physical sensation, a punch in the gut.
Which brings us to the next layer of this. We've talked about the why from an evolutionary perspective. Now we need to talk about the what. What is actually happening inside your brain and your body when that screenshot shatters?
Let's get into the biology of it.
This is where we look at the neurobiology of what's often called betrayal trauma. And the science is really clear on this. It's not just hurt feelings, it's a form of physiological injury.
Okay, so walk me through it. I'm Julian. I just found out Clara canceled our anniversary dinner for a networking event. Again, the screenshot in my head just broke. What happens in my brain second by second?
The first thing that happens within milliseconds is an amygdala hijack.
The brain's smoke detector.
Exactly. It detects the social threat, the abandonment, the rejection, and it pulls the fire alarm. It doesn't wait for confirmation, it just acts.
And that's the adrenaline rush, the heart pounding, the tunnel vision.
Yes. Your body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. You're instantly thrown into a state of fight, flight, or freeze. You might feel a surge of rage and want to yell at her. That's fight.
Or just want to run out of the apartment and never come back. Flight.
Or you might just feel numb, disconnected. Like you're watching a movie of your own life. That's freeze. Your body is preparing for physical impact.
But while the amygdala is doing that, it's also doing something else, right? It's shutting down the logical part of the brain.
It's effectively taking the prefrontal cortex offline. This is the sophisticated, rational, long-term planning part of your brain, the CEO. And in a crisis, the security team, the amygdala, shoves the CEO in a closet and takes over.
Which explains why you can't reason your way out of that initial panic. People say just calm down, but you literally can't.
Your hardware for calming down has been temporarily disabled. You're running on pure, raw survival instinct. That's why people do and say things in these moments that they deeply regret later. They're not thinking clearly because they can't think clearly.
But what about the pain? That deep, aching, physical feeling pain of heartbreak. Where did that come from?
This is probably the most incredible part of the whole process. Brain imaging studies show that when you experience this kind of deep social rejection, the parts of your brain that light up are the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula.
And those are?
Those are the same neural pathways that activate when you experience physical pain. If I were to, say, break your arm, those are the areas that would scream out.
So the phrase a broken heart isn't really a metaphor.
It's a neurological reality. Your brain is processing emotional betrayal with the same circuitry it uses for a physical wound.
Why would it be wired that way? It seems inefficient.
It's brutally efficient. Think about it from a survival perspective. What's the purpose of physical pain?
To tell you to stop doing something. Don't touch the hot stove. Stop walking on the broken leg.
It's a powerful, unignorable signal that something is threatening your physical integrity. Well, in the ancestral environment, social integrity was physical integrity. Being ostracized from the tribe was a death sentence.
So the brain needed a signal for social injury that was just as powerful and unignorable as the signal for physical injury.
Exactly. Social pain hurts because it's supposed to. It's supposed to make you stop everything and fix the social bond that is critical to your survival.
Wow. Okay, so we had the amygdala hijack, the rational brain going offline, and the pain centers firing. What's the last piece that explains the update lag itself, the getting stuck part?
That's the loop. It's a feedback loop between the hippocampus, your brain's memory center, and the default mode network.
The default mode network is what's active when your mind is wandering, right? Daydreaming, thinking about the past or future.
Yes. So when you're hit with this shocking new reality that contradicts your screenshot, your brain goes into debug mode. The default mode network kicks into high gear, and the hippocampus starts serving up files.
The old files. The good times.
All of them. It's replaying the memories. It's pulling up the old text messages from your memory. It's remembering the promises that were made, the feelings that were shared.
It's basically holding up the screenshot and saying to the new data, this doesn't compute. My evidence says X, but reality is showing me Y, rerunning the calculation.
It's an error correction loop. The brain is desperately trying to make the new reality fit the old model. It gets stuck replaying the past because it's trying to find the variable that changed. It's looking for the bug in the code.
But the bug isn't a bug. The entire program has been rewritten.
And that's the lag. You're stuck in that loop, reliving the golden age, while the present reality slips further and further away.
Which is made so much worse by the fact that we don't just have these memories in our hippocampus anymore.
Oh, no.
We have them on our phones. We have literal, searchable, high-definition archives of the golden age. We have the digital museum.
The external hard drive for our own rumination loop.
Yeah. This is a uniquely modern problem that amplifies this ancient brain mechanism to a terrifying degree. I mean, who hasn't done this? You're feeling low, you're feeling disconnected from your partner, and you find yourself just scrolling back months, even years in your text history to find the proof.
The proof that it was good once. The proof that you're not crazy.
Yes. And there's a story from the source material about a woman named Elena that is just the perfect embodiment of this whole phenomenon.
Let's talk about Elena.
I was reading a thread online about the digital museum, a term used to describe people who hoard old text messages to justify staying in dead-end relationships. There's a story about Elena, who kept a folder of screenshots from the first 6 months of her relationship with David. Whenever David was cold, dismissive, or absent in the present, Elena would scroll through those vibrant, loving screenshots. In behavioral economics, this is the ultimate sunk cost fallacy. She was using relationship screenshots, frozen moments of high value, to subsidize a current reality that was bankrupt. She felt that if she left, she would lose the investment represented by those beautiful memories. But those pixels weren't a forecast. They were a legacy of a person who no longer existed. It's a cognitive bias, where we value what we had more than what we're currently losing. When I see stories like Elena's, I'm reminded that we are often more in love with our own archives than with the living, breathing person in front of us. We treat social dynamics like a fixed contract, but as the underlying variables shift, the contract becomes a ghost. My take. You can't live in a screenshot. We have to learn to cut our losses emotionally, recognizing that the person who sent those texts has undergone a phase transition. Staying out of loyalty to a memory is just a slow way of losing your future.
Subsidizing a current reality that was bankrupt. That is such a powerful way to put it.
It's like her relationship is deep in debt, and she keeps trying to show the bank her pay stubs from 3 years ago as proof that she's good for it.
But the bank is looking at her current empty account. And this behavior, this screenshotting, it's so common now. Why do you think we do it? What's the primary motivation?
Well, the sources talk about a few things. Validation is a big one. You screenshot a fight and send it to your friends. Am I crazy here? Look what he said.
You're crowdsourcing your reality, trying to get external validation for your internal state.
Right. But the other big one is keeping receipts.
The language there is so revealing, isn't it? Receipts.
When do you need a receipt?
Yeah.
You need it for your taxes or to return something that's broken.
Or for a court case. You're gathering evidence for a future trial.
Exactly. If you're screenshotting conversations with your partner, you're not operating from a place of trust. You're operating like a prosecutor building a case. Exhibit A, the text you sent on May 15th, 2022, where you said you would love me forever.
You're treating the relationship like an adversarial process. It fundamentally shifts the dynamic from one of connection to one of surveillance.
And what's so dangerous about it, and what happened with Elena, is that you end up trying to litigate feeling.
Which is impossible.
Yeah.
Feelings aren't a legal contract. They're like the weather. You can't use yesterday's sunny forecast as evidence that it shouldn't be raining today. It doesn't work.
But Elena is doing exactly that. She's holding up the sunshine screenshots from the past and screaming at the present-day thunderstorm.
And this is a perfect illustration of the sunk cost fallacy from behavioral economics. Can you break that down a little?
It's the idea that we make irrational decisions based on our past investments rather than on current or future outcomes. The classic example is, you spend $1,000 fixing up an old car that keeps breaking down. And you should just sell it for scrap, but you think, I've already put so much money into it. So you spend another $500. You're throwing good money after bad because you can't let go of the initial investment.
And Elena is doing that with her emotions. Her investment is those beautiful first 6 months, the memories, the screenshots.
And she feels that if she leaves David now, that investment is lost. It means those 6 months were a waste, a lie.
Which is the core cognitive distortion. The past wasn't a lie. It was true then. The screenshots are historical artifacts. They're not currency you can spend today.
She's more afraid of losing the past than she is of the pain of her present.
She'd rather live in a beautiful museum that's on fire than step outside into the unknown.
A beautiful museum that's on fire.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got the evolutionary wiring, the neurobiological pain response, and this modern digital trap. I think it's time we get into the mechanics you mentioned at the start, the really nerdy stuff.
It's time to talk about state space and Kalman filters.
I have to admit, this is the part where my eyes started to glaze over a little bit when I was reading the prep material. It sounds like rocket science. How can engineering math possibly explain a broken heart?
It sounds complex, but the core idea is surprisingly simple and intuitive. Let's use an analogy. You're driving your car and your GPS is on. It knows your location, your speed, your direction.
Okay.
Now, you drive into a long tunnel. You lose the satellite signal. What does the little car icon on your screen do?
It keeps moving. It just sort of guesses where I am based on how fast I was going when I went in.
It's using the last good data point, your speed and direction, to predict your current state inside the tunnel. It's running a predictive model.
Right.
But what happens if 10 seconds into the tunnel, you hit a massive traffic jam and come to a complete stop?
The GPS doesn't know. The icon on the screen keeps chugging along at 60 miles an hour. It thinks I'm halfway through the tunnel when I haven't moved an inch.
That gap, the gap between your predicted position and your actual position is the error. That's the update lag.
I love that. Okay, so how does this apply to people?
Your brain is basically a biological prediction machine. It's a naive Kalman filter. It's constantly building models of the world and the people in it to predict what they will do next.
So the screenshot is the last good data point. It's my friend's personality right before he went into the tunnel of his new job and new life stress.
And while he's in the tunnel, your brain assumes he's continuing on the same trajectory. He's the guy who always has time for coffee. He's the guy who replies to texts instantly.
But inside the tunnel, he's hit a traffic jam. He's stressed, he's tired, his priorities have shifted. He's come to a stop, or at least slowed way down.
And when he comes out of the tunnel, when you meet him for that coffee, the system crashes. Your predicted version of him is a mile down the road from the actual version sitting in front of you. That jarring snap back to reality, that's the pain.
This makes so much sense. And we have another story from the sources about a guy named Marcus that seems like a perfect case study for this.
Marcus is someone whose entire life was based on the belief that the car would always travel at 60 miles per hour. He didn't account for tunnels.
Let me read this. Imagine a software architect in Seattle named Marcus, who built his entire identity around his predictable upward trajectory. He viewed his life as a linear progression until, suddenly, a series of hidden variables, a company merger, a health scare, and a shift in industry tech caused his world to freeze overnight, much like water turning to ice at the final degree of cooling. He felt like he'd lost his sovereignty, spiraling into a crisis because he couldn't control the output of his life. This is where state-space system theory becomes a survival tool. Marcus's mistake was thinking the water of his life would always be liquid just because it had been for years. He ignored the latent variables cooling the temperature beneath the surface. I've talked about this on my channel before. True psychological sovereignty isn't about stopping the world from changing. It's about managing the variables you can control so that when the phase transition happens, you aren't shattered by the ice. I felt for Marcus because his story is the story of everyone living in the 21st century. We are all operating in systems with hidden inputs. To maintain your sanity, you have to accept that you're an operator in an unstable system. I believe the highest skill we can develop today is the ability to decenter our ego from the outcome. If the state of the world changes, your space, your internal sense of self must remain independent. You are the player, not the score.
You are the player, not the score. That's the whole game right there.
Yes. But let's break down the mechanics of his crash. The story uses two key terms: hidden variables and phase transitions.
Okay, so state space theory divides a system into two parts. First, there are the observations. These are the things you can see and measure. For Marcus, that was his paycheck, his job title, his daily routine.
The GPS signal, the stuff on the surface.
Exactly. But then there's the hidden state. This is the true underlying reality of the system that you can't directly observe. For Marcus, the hidden variables were the secret merger negotiations happening at the corporate level.
The slow buildup of plaque in his arteries from stress.
The fact that the coding language he specialized in was becoming obsolete. These things were all happening in the tunnel. They were changing the true state of his life, but the observations on the surface hadn't caught up yet.
So he was looking at his paycheck and thinking, I'm safe, while the floor was silently rotting out from under him.
And that brings us to the phase transition. This is such a critical idea. Complex systems, like a human life, a relationship, or an economy, they often don't change in a smooth, linear way.
They don't just gradually decline.
No, they absorb stress, and they absorb stress, and they appear stable, 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 until they hit a critical threshold. And then they don't bend, they snap.
Like water turning to ice. It stays liquid at 2 degrees, at 1 degree, at 0.1 degrees. And then suddenly at 0, it undergoes a radical, non-linear transformation. It flips into a completely different state.
Marcus's life experienced a phase transition. He went from successful architect to unemployed and sick almost overnight. But it wasn't overnight. The temperature had been dropping for years. He just wasn't paying attention to the thermometer.
He was only looking at whether the water was wet.
Yes, and this is exactly what happens in so many breakups. A partner will say, I'm shocked, everything was fine yesterday. And the other will say, fine, I've been unhappy for 3 years.
The temperature has been dropping, but the fine partner was ignoring all the hidden variables, the size, the distance, the lack of intimacy, until the system finally hit 0 degrees and froze.
And that scientific paper we mentioned, the one on mood dynamics, it actually provides a mathematical basis for this. It found that in brains that are prone to depression or anxiety, their predictive models have high inertia and rigidity.
What does that mean, inertia?
It means their predictions are sticky, they resist change. A healthy brain is flexible. It updates its predictions quickly based on new data. Oh, my friend seems tired and stressed. I'll adjust my expectations for this coffee.
A rigid brain says.
A rigid brain says, my friend has always been high energy. The screenshot says he's high energy. Therefore, his current low energy is a betrayal of the model. The model must be correct, so reality must be wrong.
So update lag is a measure of mental rigidity. It's the stubbornness of your internal model.
It's a refusal to accept new data. And the longer you refuse, the bigger the gap between your map and the territory becomes, and the more painful the eventual correction will be.
Okay, this is heavy. So if we accept that everything is an unstable system, that we're all just operators of these faulty prediction machines, and that phase transitions are inevitable, what on earth do we do about it? How do we fix this?
Well, now we have to turn to the last piece of our puzzle. We have to look at the solution proposed by control theory.
All right, lay it on me. If my life is an unstable system, how do I control it?
That's the beautiful, terrifying first lesson of control theory. You don't.
Well, that's not very helpful.
No, wait, it's the most helpful thing in the world.
Right.
In any system, you have your inputs, which are the things you do, and you have the outputs, which are the results.
Right.
The fundamental law is that you cannot directly control the output. You can't make your partner love you. You can't make your boss promote you. You can't make the world be fair. Trying to do so is mathematically and spiritually futile.
You're trying to reach into the machine and force the gears to turn.
Yes. And you will just get your hand crushed. The only thing you ever have any control over are your inputs.
So in the context of Julian and Clara, Julian can't control the output Clara's feelings or her career.
Correct.
But he can control his inputs. Like what's an input in that situation?
An input is how he communicates. Does he make accusations, or does he express his insecurity vulnerably? An input is how he manages his own state. Is he sleeping, exercising, working on his own art? Or is he just sitting around waiting for her? An input is his attention. Is he focusing on the reality of the busy, successful woman in front of him? Or is he obsessing over the screenshot of the struggling artist?
I can't control if my friend is too busy for our weekly coffee anymore. but I can control whether my input is a guilt-tripping text message or an understanding one that proposes a different, more flexible way to connect.
That is it, 100%. And this is where it gets even more critical because the sources talk about the count of consequences.
That sounds dramatic.
It's basically the butterfly effect. Every single input you choose, no matter how small, sends ripples through the system and creates a new set of conditions. Let's map it out. You're feeling insecure because of update lag. Input choice. You stay up late scrolling through the digital museum to comfort yourself. Consequence. You're sleep deprived.
Right.
Next day, because you're tired and irritable, you misinterpret a perfectly neutral text from your partner as being hostile. Consequence. You send a passive-aggressive response. That's another bad input.
And that input causes them to feel attacked, so they pull back even further.
Which confirms your initial fear, which makes you more insecure, which leads to more bad inputs. It's a death spiral, a feedback loop of instability that you are feeding with your own actions.
So, by trying to hold on to the past, I'm actually accelerating the system's collapse.
You become the primary source of instability in the system you're trying to save.
Wow. So the goal isn't to prevent the phase transition. It's not to keep the water liquid forever.
That's impossible. The goal is simply to be a better thermometer. The goal is fast updating. You want to shrink the time between the moment reality changes and the moment you accept it.
So how do we train ourselves to do that? What are the practical steps?
The first one is to notice drift early. Don't dismiss the little things, the slightly shorter phone calls, the fatigue in their posture. Don't tell yourself it's nothing. It's not nothing. It's data. It's the temperature dropping from 2 degrees to 1. Acknowledge it without panicking.
So it's not about being paranoid. It's just about being observant.
It's about being a good scientist of your own life. Step 2, dismantle the digital museum. You have to recognize that the folder of old screenshots is a liability, not an asset. It is actively feeding your prediction machine bad data and increasing your rigidity.
You have to be willing to accept that the past is history, not evidence.
And step 3 is the hardest. Accept instability. Accept that the ground is always moving. That applies to your relationships, your job, and even yourself. You're building on a tectonic plate, not on bedrock. You can build something beautiful, but you have to build it to be earthquake-proof.
Which means it has to be flexible.
Exactly. And that brings us all the way back to the beginning. The goal isn't permanence. The goal is accuracy. You don't stop loving the person. You just have to make a conscious effort to love the person who exists today, not the cached version from 3 years ago.
You have to update fast and without bitterness.
That's the art of it. Fast, non-bitter updates.
We've unpacked a lot today, from the amygdala's panic to the mathematics of freezing water. But I want to leave you with this thought from our source material. We spend so much energy trying to predict the future or hold on to the past. But the future isn't uncertain, it's just underspecified. It's a boundary that moves every time an input moves. The most brutal realization isn't that other people change. It's that you are an unstable input in your own life. Your motivation, your focus, your tolerance for pain, none of it is permanent. So when you promise forever, you're writing a check that a future version of you might not have the funds to cash. The only way to survive the phase transition is to stop trying to be a rock and a river and start learning how to swim in the cold water.